everyone. Welcome back. This is episode 20 of Collapse Talk. So, thank y'all for tuning in. We'll just dive right into it. And I'll be honest, it might seem a bit low energy. I've just had I don't know, these last couple of weeks have been a bit tight. And looking forward, I don't know, there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment for me, personally. But I did want to record something because this is I don't know, this is one of the main things that I do, my main projects in my life. So, we'll just dive right into it. In this show, I talk about the collapse and I spread it out into 3 different subjects, from the international scene, geopolitics, domestically, our mess of a situation, and then also in the world, natural world, environmental stuff. So, yeah, I wanted to make a quick recording, just a quick heads up. I do have an operation coming up, or tomorrow actually, but it's nothing serious. Just basically it's just something that I have to do because, not to give too much information, but the policy holder of my insurance plan has lost, become unemployed or they're getting laid off. So now I'm going to lose my insurance. So yippee, that's America for you. But it's, again, nothing life-threatening, but we just wanted to get it done now just to get out of the way because we don't know what's going to happen. But regardless, because we just have to make do with what's going on. Enough about me, really, just, to talk about what's going on in the world. And a lot has happened in the last couple of weeks. It always seems like whenever I release something, like the next day, there's like a big story that breaks out. So it's just like, wow, I should have waited a bit, but now I'll just be able to talk about it. So, yeah, internationally, we have a new war. Yippee, we have a new war a conventional war between 2 nations, Azerbaijan and Armenia. These nations are countries, former Soviet republics. They've been at each other's throats since like the 80s and 90s, since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And I talked about this in an earlier episode where they had some skirmishes, but now it's a full-blown war. They're shelling each other, bomb strikes, like it's getting bad. And of course, this has serious implications for geopolitics. But just a quick rundown because this will be like a layman's explanation of the situation. So, when the Soviet Republic collapsed, these 2 nations, Armenia and Azerbaijan, they started cementing their rule, especially in the region of Nagorno Karabakh. So this is an area that Azerbaijan claims control over, and the actual control is with Armenians. It's like an ethnic thing. It's very, I'm not going to do the best job explaining it, but we have articles that I can quote so that y'all can get a better idea of what's happening if you haven't been following it. But yes, so this war is it's kind of under the radar because not that many people understand the situation and they don't realize that this could be like the first spark that could descend into World War III, honestly. So, and it's interesting too because we haven't really seen like a conventional war between 2 moderately sized militaries. Now, of course, in this conflict, they're trying to stay within the region, Nagorno Karabakh. Of course, though, they're now shelling other cities, so this is just going to escalate. And what I mean about because it's basically a proxy war now, what's going to happen is that there are global powers that are picking sides. So our Azerbaijan is backed by Turkey, and Turkey is a NATO power. But, lately they've been kind of rogue. Not kind of, they are rogue. Erdogan has really trying to, it's pretty clear he wants to reestablish the Ottoman Empire. Like, he wants to become the next Shah or something. Or I should say Sultan. That's what the proper title is. But with Armenia, they're backed by Russia. And also what's interesting now is that a lot of the Western countries are also starting to back Armenia too. So, like, NATO members are backing up Armenia. Meanwhile, Turkey, which is a NATO member, is backing up Azerbaijan. So it's a very interesting situation that's developing. And Turkey as a whole, they're starting to push around Greece also. So it's like, the only reason they're in NATO is because of the Bosphorus Strait. But, I want to talk more about this conflict that's happening between Armenia and Azerbaijan. because it's just the opening weeks of the fighting, and already they've said about 220 people have died, and those aren't independently verified, so those are definitely low estimates, or possibly, who knows. But yes, I'll read from BBC. So the title that they said here, Nagorno Karabakh conflict, major cities hit as heavy fighting continues. So I'll quote them. Azerbaijan's second largest city, Ganja, has been shelled by Armenian forces as heavy clashes continue over the disputed Nagorno Karabakh enclave. The enclave is officially part of Azerbaijan but run by ethnic Armenians. The self-proclaimed authorities there said they hit Ganja's military airport after Azerbaijani forces shelled the region's capital, Stepanakert. Azerbaijan says no Ganja military sites were hit. More than 220 people have died since clashes began a week ago. Armenia and Azerbaijan went to war over Nagorno Karabakh in 1988 to 1994, eventually declaring a ceasefire. However, they have never reached a settlement over the dispute. And let me move a little bit forward. Yes, so Azerbaijan's military says its forces have retaken control of 7 villages since last Sunday, while Nagorno Karabakh says its troops have improved their frontline positions. Earlier this week, Armenia said it stood ready to engage with mediators from France, Russia, and the US to try to agree to a ceasefire. Azerbaijan, which is openly backed by Turkey, has demanded the withdrawal of Armenian troops from Nagorno Karabakh and adjacent areas seized by ethnic Armenian troops. Nagorno Karabakh is our land, Azerbaijani's president Ilham Aliyev said in a televised address to the nation on Sunday, as he demanded Armenia apologize to his country and provide a timetable for the withdrawal. This is the end. We showed them who we are. We are chasing them like dogs. So yes, so this is interesting because these are the type of countries, I guess, it's like more strongman. You see some of these Azerbaijani videos, and it's definitely like state control, and they have no outside point of view. And then Armenia, I guess, is more westernized. But again, I'm not, in war, like they're no good guys, of course, or in some wars there are. This one's is more just like a conflict of resources, or it's very muddy because they're fighting over land and dirt, basically. I don't know. Like I said, this type of thing, like I'm not really. This is like these ethnic conflicts. They go back so long that they honestly don't even know why they're fighting each other at this point. But they're just doing it. So that's what's happening. And as I said, this could definitely be the first spark for conflict. I mean, we really have to see, but it's just interesting that Turkey, being a rogue NATO member, is really stirring up trouble. And, they're also acting out in Syria, so like the Rojava area. And as I said, also they're competing with Greece, and they're both allies, supposed to be allies, but, well, historically they're not. So it's just like, what was going on? So yeah, Turkey's acting a fool, and they're going to drag us into a war, possibly with Russia. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. This is such a really volatile situation, but this is kind of like something that nobody's really paying attention about. It's like, whatever. People are dying. Who cares? Unless you're Armenian, then of course this is a big issue because Armenia is kind of sandwiched between Azerbaijan and Turkey. So, and also there was an instance where an Armenian jet was shot down by Turkish, either a SAM missile or some other defense system, maybe another jet. But yeah, they're slowly, because they try to keep it within this one area, but then now they're starting to shell, and there's already ballistic missiles being launched. I mean, it's gonna spiral out of control pretty quickly. But it is interesting to just watch, because we really haven't seen like a nation, like two nations fighting each other, in an offensive military, like frontline combat. So it'll be interesting to kind of watch and see how it plays out. Well, I mean, not to say that there haven't been other nations at war, but this is like truly like a conventional war, which is interesting to watch. But again, it's still sad that they're in this position, and you're seeing people, civilians, trying to flee to safety, getting shelled, so that's that. But that's the conflict as it stands. and these clashes that are breaking out. And I know for certain that there are, like, because, the Armenian community is pretty big in the U.S., so, like, I saw some demonstrations in L.A., and, yeah, I mean, people are, it's a war, so who knows? Who knows what will happen? Definitely, I could definitely see, American Armenians going back to their homeland to fight. Like, that's definitely a possibility, And, more power to them, because they kind of were attacked, I guess, out of the blue, because they have no reason to attack. They just want to maintain the status quo. So who knows? So yeah, that's what's happening there. The conflict that's occurring. There's more unrest around the world, and more protests and demonstrations breaking out. So it's not just the U.S. that's facing workers' rights issues. So in Indonesia, they are having demonstrations over a bill, Omnibus Bill, and this bill, that it's basically like a lot of workers' unions are coming out, and you're seeing a lot of young people. So it's basically kind of like the same type of, well, not the same, but just workers' rights issues. But reading from CNN, quote, Indonesian police used water cannons and tear gas on Tuesday to disperse protesters rallying against a new jobs law in 2 cities on the island of Java, according to a police spokesman and news and media report. Earlier, thousands of workers and students had protested peacefully across the archipelago at the start of a 3-day national strike against President Joko Widodo's Omnibus Job Creation Bill, which was passed into law on Monday. El Shinta Radio posted a video on its official Twitter account showing police late in the evening using water cannons against hundreds of protesters in the city of Serang in Banten province, about 70 kilometers to the west of Jakarta. Banten police spokesman Eddie Sumardi, via text message, sent that the situation was under control by 9:15 p.m. local time, and that 2 police officers had been injured by rocks thrown at them, but did not respond to further queries. So, yes, this bill has been passed through, and of course workers and students are not with it. So this is like a left-wing, a kind of a populist movement. I mean, you see some of these flags and it's all red. And, it's interesting that you see like a left-wing kind of socialist movement, in Indonesia, which is historically like very anti-left-wing. Genocidal to a point. So, like, well, not to a point. Like, they just were genocidal. I'm trying to think. There was an Australian film. I don't know why it skipped my mind, but for those of you, some of you probably already know what I'm talking about. But there's an Australian film set during the purges that were occurring in Indonesia at that time, and also documentary about an enforcer or one of the executioners. And it's like a trip, honestly. It's like the art of killing, right? I think. But yeah, I mean, it was nasty, bro. And then like you see this guy who did the killings, and he's just like he's a gangster, and of course the government backed him up, so he can just openly say, yeah, no, this is how I did it. I just bound them with wires and then plastic bag over the head. There you go. Like that's like he was so casual about it. It's crazy, but. Yeah, so it's interesting to see, with that history and given how vicious they were, to see this kind of movement. But it's good. It's good because it's workers' rights and student rights and all that stuff. But I wanted to continue with this. So, quote, critics of the Omnibus Bill, which revises more than 70 existing laws to accelerate reform of Southeast Asia's largest economy, say it is too pro-business with its removal of labor protections and relaxations of environmental rules. Government officials say the law relaxes rigid labor rules and streamlines environmental rules in order to improve the investment climate and creation jobs. So, and they're also saying that the markets welcome this. Of course they do. Indonesian markets cheered the passage of the bill, with the main stock index up as much as 1.31%, and the rupiah reaching as high as 1.28% before powering some gains. right? So of course they passed pro-business laws, laxing labor regulations or the environmental regulations. So of course the market's like that because it's more profit, So, and of course this is not because I have Indonesian friends, and I'm like, it's a beautiful country. So I'm not saying anything to denigrate them, but it's it's got the makings of a banana republic. Speaking as somebody who comes from that type of have that type of heritage, so I can definitely see some similarities in the labor laws and environmental rules. Who knows? Because when I look at nations like this, because this is an island nation, or islands, it's an archipelago. It's like, Indonesia is very diverse, but in areas like this, I don't know how they are with their environmental rules and polluting and littering. Because when I go to my homeland, the DR, people don't give a shit about the environment. It's really sad. You see like this beautiful landscape, and then it's just fields of garbage and trash, and nobody gives a fuck. It's sad. It's disgusting. Like there was a point where I went to one slum, and my father, because this is my father's hometown that he grew up as a child, like dirt poor upbringing, really. And he was explaining to me, this area where the slum is at used to be a mangrove. So, and you can still see some of those trees, and you can tell that this was like a mangrove kind of area. But the people moved in there because they just kept throwing trash in the area to the point where it just became solid ground. And then they started building shacks. It's crazy. But, and I'm sure that those type of conditions exist there. And there's not as much concern over the environment. And like they said, oh, well, we're taking away these regulations so we can streamline these rules. They don't care. It's just because it costs money to, they just want to cut corners. It's all about profit. Anyway, don't want to get hung up on that. But that's what's happening there. Regulations being slowly lax, and labor rules, so we'll see. Because some of these videos from the demonstrations have been pretty intense. Like they're just like breaking shit up. So we'll see what happens there. But that's in Indonesia. And another demonstrations that are also occurring are in Chile. So Chile, they had their own little insurrection last year that we talked about, to the point that the government decided to reform the constitution with a referendum. So they were able to get some stuff done, but now they're still protesting and over it's essentially the same things, neoliberal government policies. Part of it also had to do with the recent anniversary of the coup that had occurred in 1979 between well, his name escapes me actually, but he was a democratically elected left-wing president, and then a CIA-backed coup, but the military rose up, and he didn't go down. He was at the presidential palace like end of times, yeah. So yeah, didn't surrender. But my point there being, they had the anniversary recently, and it was on 9/11. So we had our 9/11 anniversary, but they had their coup anniversary, and of course that sprung up protests from left-wing groups. So yeah, they're demonstrating there. What also had recently occurred was that there was allegations that police had thrown a 16-year-old protester off a bridge, and so that it's kind of led to more demonstrations out of that. So yeah, it's just they come out to the streets, and the police do a violent action, and so now the protest isn't over what they were initially talking about. The protests are now over, you threw the 16-year-old kid off a bridge, fuck you, like that. So it's kind of like a tit for tat, honestly. So there's that. But those demonstrations in Chile, I couldn't really find an article on it. Nobody's really like updating it, so it's mainly just like posted I'm seeing on the internet. But yes, so that's what I was looking at, some demonstrations. So we have our also apart from the wars and demonstrations, we still have our global pandemic outbreak of coronavirus, And now what's slowly happening is that we're seeing the second wave break out here in the United States. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I had some people that are getting sick now. In fact, I know somebody who got sick again, somebody very close to me. So it's just, yeah, it's a lot of paranoia on my end. But, you just gotta self-isolate and be very careful now. I still haven't done my shots. Damn it, the flu shots. Yeah, okay. Anyway, but I wanted to talk at least about the global outbreak. And I mean, as I said, some countries are doing just fine. Other countries are seeing their second wave, such as New Zealand, or I shouldn't say, Paris is experiencing a second wave, or France is. With New Zealand, they're experiencing, or they've already beaten most of the local cases. So they're completely case-free on the island. So it was just good for them because this is the second time that they beat it. So it's, it's easy. You just control who comes in and out. But also, it also shows the ability for at least the government to tell the people, how to coordinate and such. Because people don't like, when they hear big government, of course, like, we don't want too big of a government, but we need rules. We still need some rules, especially in a time of crisis like this. Like, we need rules. We need some guidelines, So, with this New Zealand, and also, like, it's not even government, it's just, personal responsibility. And a lot of Americans, at least, aren't really accountable for themselves. I mean, I can't talk so much because there's some things that I still need to fix up. But, like, there's some people that, like, with the mask, like, they're just like, no. Like, what are you, like, you're not losing anything. I don't know. Anyway, so that's what's happening in New Zealand, at least. They beat the coronavirus outbreak. So we'll see if another tourist comes back in, or who knows. But as I said, in France, in Paris, they're starting to experience their second outbreak. And Paris is beginning to shut down bars, and they're raising their alert to maximum. So I'm reading this from BBC, quote, Paris will shut down all bars completely from Tuesday after the French government raised the city's coronavirus alert to a maximum following a period of high infection rates. Bars, gyms, and swimming pools will all be closed for 2 weeks in a bid to curb the spread of the virus, the city's police chief said. But restaurants will remain open if strict hygiene rules are in place. On Sunday, France reported 12,565 cases of COVID-19. Quote, these are breaking measures because the epidemic is moving too fast, Police Chief Didier Lallement said during a press conference on Monday. We have to slow it down so that our health system is not overwhelmed, he added. France's maximum alert comes into force when the infection rate in a locality exceeds 250 infections per 100,000 people, and at least 30% of intensive care beds are reserved for COVID-19 patients. There are 203 active coronavirus clusters in the wider Paris region, health officials said. So right, they're starting to see their surge, and so they're starting to shut down places just to slow the spread. And that's kind of, they really tried to explain this to us, but I think it was really missed on a lot of people because they saw the shutdown and because they didn't think about the curve, because people were going to get sick and infected. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. But if you at least kind of slow down how people interact and how they go about their business, then that kind of slows the spread, and then our healthcare system, our hospitals, ICU beds aren't overwhelmed, because then more people will die if the hospitals can't reach everyone. So that's what's happening there. At least they're trying to slow things down in Paris. I'm sure though that they are experiencing some economic troubles. I don't know so far as stimulus or what kind of grants they're giving out. Well, we'll have to see, because I mean a lot of different places have furloughed instead of laying off, or they nationalize payrolls. So there's options. There's options to keep people employed. There's options to keep people, so their income isn't just gone under their feet. Because this seems to be a problem unique to us right now. Like, we've had the worst response out of all the major developed countries. But people make excuses for it. It's yeah, can't really take people seriously. Not that anybody should take me seriously most of the time, but regardless, in France, that's what's happening there. I'm sure there's other places around Europe and in the world that's starting to get their second wave coming through. But we'll see, because now, it's October, and November's going to be wild. December is, who knows what's going to happen there. So, we just got to buckle up, really. That's what's going to happen. So that's the coronavirus outbreak in France. I also wanted to add, that I just recently read about the coronavirus vaccine. In Japan, they're saying that they're going to release it for free. So there you have it. This just makes absolute sense. Who knows what's going to happen with the vaccine in this country, but somebody's going to try to take advantage of it. And there's going to be more unrest when people realize that they can't get the vaccine or they can't pay for it. Yeah, that's going to be a nasty situation when people can't get the vaccine. Yeah, this country, man. I don't know, man. Anyway, so that's what's happening with the coronavirus in the world. And I wanted to talk about, it's not necessarily collapse related, but it's kind of ties into I don't know how exactly it ties in, because, I made some comments on my last podcast and also in my social media. Some personal people, saw what I said. I was kind of not necessarily trying to espouse MGTOW ideology, because I'm not labeling myself as a MGTOW or incel. Though I may fit those descriptions, I don't consider that a part of my identity, right? And then people make these assumptions that I have views against women or, something of that matter. Or people are so quick to jump to conclusions when, I talk a lot of women's issues. It's very up there. But also, men's issues also need to be up there as well. But regardless, I wanted to at least bring this story to light, because it's highlighting a phenomenon that occurs when the sex ratio is out of balance, right? So in India, which is notoriously known for gang rapes and all sorts of activities, there's a new rape case coming out where a 19-year-old woman, I should say, was raped and later died from her injuries. And this is sparking a new wave of debates, and there's cover-ups. So reading from CNN, quote, after a teenager's death and an alleged attack by 4 men sparked protests across India, state police announced Thursday that she had not been raped. The suspects in the case remain in custody and still face murder charges. The 19-year-old woman died on Tuesday, 2 weeks after she was allegedly attacked by upper caste men in the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. She belonged to the Dalit community, the lowest strata in India's caste-based hierarchy. Local police initially said the victim was raped and strangled in a field near her home in Hathras, but on Thursday, the police said they were ruling out the rape allegations. Quote, putting to rest all the speculation, the Forensic Science Laboratory report on the vaginal sample of the 19-year-old girl of Hathras has revealed that she was not raped. Prashant Kumar, a senior official from the Uttar Pradesh police, said in a statement, the post-mortem report indicated the woman died due to trauma following injury to the neck. Continuing, the state police arrested 4 men last month in connection to the crime. They were initially charged with gang rape and attempted murder. The victim's body had already been cremated, and her family has not responded to the police statement ruling out the alleged rape. Speaking to CNN News 18, the mother of the victim, who could not be identified for legal reasons, said her daughter's body was taken away against her will. I begged them to show her her face one last time. They didn't, she said. So yeah, that's well, let me continue also. Swati Maliwal, the chief of the Delhi Commission of Women, alleged on Tuesday that the victim's body was cremated without the family's consent, which the local authorities denied. Okay, so yeah, they So this is, just another day in India, I guess, because there's always some kind of gang rape or rape of a woman that occurs and that gets covered up. And there's also opposition leaders trying to get involved with this. It's again, this is kind of what happens when you have a society that has too many men. I mean, if we can, it's almost a similar situation that we have in China, right? There's more men compared to women. In fact, let me look up the sex ratio of India right now, actually. But it's a patriarchal society. And as they also showed here, she was in the lowest caste. So she was the target of, not only being a woman, but, just the dynamic, the power dynamic of the caste system. Well, that's actually the first thing that showed up, sex ratio India. Right, so according to the United Nations, sex ratio is defined as the number of males per 100 females. Sex ratio of India is 108.176, 108 males per 100 females in 2020. It means that India has 924 females per 1,000 males. In absolute terms, India has 48.04 female population compared to 51.96 male population. So there are more males than there are females. And I mean, here's the thing too, because in that society, or not in every respect, but the arranged marriages and arranged relationships are very much a thing. But it also plays into this mentality that men can own women. Also, I mean, it's messed up. So I mean, that's what this aspect, because you don't really see feminists talk about this. They don't talk about these issues. They'll talk about all this woke crap about pronouns and stuff, but they'll never touch an issue like this, right? Or they'll never really mention about the women of color in our country and all the issues that they face. Black women, black mothers die more giving childbirth than white women. I mean, so, and I didn't mean to I don't mean to rag on feminism like that, but a lot of these sort of issues, you never hear anybody talk about this. A lot of these woke people never talk about this, but it's just interesting. Well, I shouldn't say interesting. It's sad. It's sad for the woman, this girl that died, and it's sad that this is a situation that women are facing in India. There's so many comments of people posting oh, I went to India and wasn't forced into a marriage. Yes, wow, really. But that's what's happening there. It's not necessarily collapse related, but it just goes to show what can happen in a society. Because it's interesting. I've had some theories now about masculinity and femininity, or the masculization or feminization of societies, right? So you have in this society, which is far more patriarchal than ours, because there's more males. Of course, this is of course toxic masculinity or patriarchy. But then you look in our country, and there are more females than males in our country, and so there's a slow feminization of our society, because I've noticed now I'm starting to try to assert my masculinity more, and I'm getting people aren't liking what they're seeing. They're not liking it, and I'm not saying, oh, I got to be a man now. I'm not like that, but trying to be more self-reliant on myself. It's still a lot of work, but in terms of prepping, and this is what's happened, right? Me becoming a prepper has slowly, I wouldn't say made me more conservative, probably more libertarian, but it's slowly turning me more masculine, which is a good thing, because before, I was just because they tell you, oh, you need to be in touch with your feelings and express yourself and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, when I try to do that, when I try to air my issues or my problems, or not all the time, but when I do try to talk about something that's going on in my life, nobody gives a fuck. Nobody cares. And it's mixed messages, because people are telling me, oh, don't be afraid, you can cry, all this and that. And then, and not that I don't like being a crybaby, but like if I do talk about a problem that's going on in my life, people don't want to fucking hear it. They don't want to hear it. They don't have time for it. So, I mean, again, guys, they don't really care about us, but I don't know exactly where I'm trying to go with it because, again, like I said in the last episode, I'm listening to a lot more men advice, masculine advice, and, it's very easy when you read some of these comments, like, you can tell, like, these are like, oh, okay, some of these are level-headed and the others are just like, straight up, like, just go back to the 50s, like that, So there's that. So yeah, this situation, considering the sex ratio isn't, more towards males, you see situations like this where guys who, I would assume, or I shouldn't say assume, but, when you have large swaths of males who are single and horny, it's not a good situation. It's not a good situation, especially if they don't have an outlet to, release, so to speak. That's not a good situation at all. And actually, now that I'm on this thought, and after this thought, I'll move on to my next segment. So it's interesting because you look back in time, right? And you realize in like the more primitive times, right? It's very harsh, right? And then you would have bands of men together trying to survive because they have to stick together, they have to work together, right? And then eventually there'll just come a point where they're like, okay, like we need wives, like, because we're going to get old and then we're going to start dying off and nobody's going to replace us. Well, how do we get wives? Because there's no women around here. Oh, that village over there with these farmers who don't even know how to defend themselves, they got a lot of females, so let's go take those. I mean, like, there was a point in time where women were resources. They were, which is sorry. I'm like, what do you think marriage is? That was an exchange of, okay, I'll give you my daughter, and in exchange, you'll give me a dowry, right? It's a transaction. Now, of course, we've moved past that, but you can see a lot of those behaviors, especially like in terms of patriarchal, like especially in like religion, right? Like you have to have these rules in place because the thought was we have to protect our women because the world, like there's crazy guys out there that want to take them, and we have to protect them from sex and marriage because she could get knocked up. And so you understand a lot of the traditional stuff that we have in place are to protect women, and the intention was to protect them, but really it just became like domineering and we owned them. But yeah, hopefully that kind of like clicked with some people, because I don't have the best way to describe it, but that's what I have to say there. But I'll stop talking about it now. So moving onward. So recently the UN chief had come out with a dire warning, saying that we are living in the shadow of nuclear catastrophe. So, reading from AP News, quote, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned Friday that the world is living in the shadow of nuclear catastrophe, fueled by growing distrust and tensions between the nuclear powers. The UN chief told a high-level meeting to commemorate the recent International Day for Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons that progress on ridding the world of nuclear weapons has stalled and at risk of backsliding. And he said strains between countries that possess nuclear weapons have increased nuclear risk. As examples, Gutierrez has expressed deep concerns at the escalating disputes between the Trump administration and China. Relations between the U.S. and Russia are at a low point. Nuclear-armed India and Pakistan are feuding over Kashmir, and India just had a border skirmish with China. And North Korea boasts about its nuclear weapons. Without naming any countries, Gutierrez said programs to modernize nuclear arsenals threaten a qualitative nuclear arms race, not to increase the number of weapons, but to make them faster, stealthier, and more accurate. Gutierrez also pointed to the only treaty concerning the size of the world's largest nuclear arsenal, the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty between the United States and Russia, which is set to expire next year. And in fact, we had backed out of a nuclear agreement. The United States backed out of a nuclear agreement. I don't believe that was the same one. No, actually it was. So they backed out of it, and it's going to expire next year, and chances are it's not going to be renewed. So that's what he's pointing, that we are closer to nuclear war than ever before, or at least since the Cold War. But then again, we're in a new Cold War. But this time, it's only more so. Like, the stakes are much higher. So that's what's happening there, really. We're not really, disarming ourselves, de-escalating. It seems like we're just heading further and further towards the brink. So we'll see. And yeah, he said that they were trying to, not necessarily like build more weapons, but they're trying to improve them. So now they're starting to build hypersonic missiles that can basically beat the radar. The way that they described it, actually, there's an infographic. I can't necessarily show it to you, of course, through my voice, but the whole point was that you have the United States on one side of the globe and then Russia or China on the other side. And in the past, they would launch the ICBM missiles, but that would just have a huge curve, like the word power belt, no, not power belt, but one of those parabolas, that's what it's called. Just a big curve, and then it would just go from the launch to the target site. Now these hypersonic missiles, they don't have such a huge curve. They are kind of like within the atmosphere. So it's riding along the curvature of the Earth. So by the time it gets detected by the target country's radars, it's like the time is cut in half. So they really don't know where those missiles are going to land until like the last second, basically. And those are the hypersonic missiles that they're developing. And also they're trying to start build tactical nukes, you could call them, so they can be used, and it's not going to leave such a background radiation. It's not going to leave so much fallout, so that troops can actually move in. So these weapons, they're finding ways to twist and turn, and it's, I don't know, man. If World War III doesn't have a couple nuclear strikes, I mean, who knows what's going to happen. Even then, like, there could be a terrorist attack with a nuclear weapon, a briefcase, or some rogue action. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. If a nuclear strike does occur in my lifetime, that's going to be pretty sad. As we saw with Beirut, that's the closest we're ever going to see a nuclear explosion, really. Because here's the thing, right? Because when it happens, the people who are closest to it really, like, they have to be like streaming, right? Like, they have to be like recording and streaming the content in order for it to be recovered, because like there's no way that they're going to be able to recover the people who are at ground zero, so to speak, because it's going to be vaporized. It's going to be a wasteland. I mean, yeah. So, I live about 2 hours from Houston, north of Houston. So seeing a nuclear strike there and the type of effects it would have in my area would be interesting. And there's, of course, nuclear maps, so you can look up and see the type of weapons that have been used, kilotons, and you can see like the fireball radius, the shockwave. So yeah, if you're near a big city, you might need to see how big of a nuclear attack needs to occur for you to, yeah, I mean, it's just something to think about, right? Because anything could happen, really. So that's the UN chief, dire warning there. And they're probably going to have the doomsday clock inch a little closer to midnight, so there's that. So that was all I really want to talk about with the international segment. So I'll move on to the domestic segment. And domestically, it's been a bit strange, bit different, if you would call it. So the White House is compromised. It's been compromised with COVID. So Trump got sick, and Kellyanne Conway got sick. The first lady got sick. like Chris Christie got sick. It's the White House is, I don't know what's going on right now. I mean, even right now, people are getting sick more. And so you see a lot of people online, especially left-wing people. And this is what I mean now. I'm starting to lose my patience with them because they're saying some really ignorant shit. They are. And they're saying like, I hope he dies, or I like this and that. And look, it's not that, because, I'm trying not to be blinded by hate. Earlier, in 2016 when he was elected, I was just like the woke people, very cringy. Well, even like some of my earlier episodes, now when I listen to them, it's cringe, honestly, but that's just part of growing, right? It's like if I had stayed in that mental state, then yeah, I would have been like, fuck him, all that. Yeah, I hope he, But I realize now, like, if he does die or relinquishes power, steps down, that's going to create a larger mess, right? And, there's going to be a lot of resentment, especially from his followers, over that treatment, over that behavior. I mean, people would, if something happened to Trump and people were celebrating it, you would see the Proud Boys out in the street, or whichever right-wing militia out in the street to basically defend his honor or his memory. It would just be another reason for a clash. But yeah, so Trump got sick, and he got sick. I mean, he may have been asymptomatic during the debate, honestly, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But he got sick, and then he had to go to Walter Reed Hospital. He was experiencing discomfort. His blood oxygen was low. I mean, it's because now I feel for the man, because now when he's talking and, you can tell that he's like struggling with this, I'm like, damn, that sucks. Like, because like he's older and he's not necessarily the healthiest. So like he's definitely within the at-risk group. I don't know. That's my problem. I care too much, and I look at this guy's life and I, the more you learn about his upbringing, and you're just like, damn, that must have sucked what he had to live through. So it kind of makes sense to see what he grew into. It kind of makes sense, really. Again, I wouldn't, if he wasn't president, I honestly wouldn't care, but he is. So it's a bit different. There's different standards. But anyway, so yeah, he was in the hospital, and now he's like on steroids or some other. They're giving him a cocktail, antibodies, like some FDA unapproved treatments, right? He's the president, so they're going to give him everything they can. But yes, so now, I mean, 2 days ago he got released, or what really happened was he said, no, you're going to release me. So I mean, he's the president. So he's back in the White House at least, or he's just trying to project strength, and he did the caravan with his Secret Service agents. He's trying to appear strong for his people, which more power to him. I mean, in a way, I kind of respect it. In a way, I do respect it, because, if he was sick and he was just like sniffling, oh, my fellow Americans, then that would look bad. So at least he's trying to like push through it, But then again, like, he's putting his Secret Service agents at risk, and, he's kind of putting himself at risk too by not listening to the doctors. I mean, you would think, because maybe he thinks the doctors are against him, but honestly, like, they just want to do their job. This is the president. They understand what they need to do, regardless. So that's what's happening there. And I just find it really interesting how, like, effectively the White House has been attacked by. Because there's some people, kind of like pointing that maybe there was a super spreader that was infiltrated. And that's certainly a possibility. I mean, we can't rule anything out now because it's 2020. But of course, we know now through video that really the super spreader event was the Rose Garden event that they had. And everybody's like hugging each other and like, oh, it kisses and all that. And they got the bug. So there's that. So that's what's happening there. We'll just have to see what happens. But Trump is sick. And they said, I don't know how long it is, because, well, I was watching Kyle Kulinski, so he was harping on about day 9, how that's usually the point where they know what's happening. So I don't know exactly what day he's on, but if something happens to him, we'll know about it. And Lord help us if he dies. Lord help us, honestly. Wow. Anyway, so that's him. He's sick. And so he got released. And so now he's saying to the effect that he's not going to have any talks about stimulus until after the election. A part of me thinks that he said that because he's like on meds or whatever. So he's just trying to like saying like, all right, we're done talking. I don't know. It's clearly clouding his judgment. He's on a cocktail, right? But him saying that, and just like looking at our response, I'm just like, dude, you're really making me want to vote for Biden. Even though I fucking hate him. I hate what he stands for. And I am worried about the gun laws that they're going to try to push through. I'm just like, we might need to get this guy out by any means necessary. Like, we might have to. But then again, part of me just can't get. I don't know. It's such a bind to be in. Because people are like, they talk down to undecided voters or, independent voters who are trying to stay objective, trying to stay, above the fray, if you want to think about it. Because they both suck. And we all lose. No matter who wins, we all lose. So it's just like, why even vote? So, maybe I won't vote presidential, but then I'll do more local election stuff. I don't know. I'm just like, or I'll just write somebody in. Yeah. Because I already said I wasn't going to do it, and then I'll be backtracking. But at the same time, like, he just does something, or he says something where I'm just like, bro, like, God damn it. And then Biden says something, and I'm just like, it's just like, why? Oh. Yeah, this is the collapse. So there's no, you're obviously not going to win, right? Some people, and as I said, people are living in denial about these things. And I mean, I talk about prepping, and people are just like, you honestly believe in that? Like, what? Like, the gaslighting just never ends, because there are people in my life who are still trying to implant in this like Inception style, just like trying to say, well, maybe you should sell your gun, sell your rifle. Why do you need a rifle for? It's gonna go through the walls. You can't hunt with that. What? It's like, and I can't just say it, even though I've already said it, but I'm just like, you don't understand. Like they don't, and these are people in my family. These are people that I'm like trying to bring into the fold. And of course, many of the prepper community would just be like, no, that's a terrible mistake. Don't, I just, a lot of people in my family are going to die. I know that now. They're going to die because they have their head in the clouds. And they look at people like me, like I'm not saying that I'm not crazy, but, there are certainly crazier people out there, like when I'm bringing, I'm spitting facts, like, I'm not trying to mislead people. Like, these are facts. And if you did your research, you would come to these conclusions. That's all I'm saying. But people are stuck in, they're trying to get the next getting laid, or I don't know, like, people are just chasing a high. That's what I feel like is happening. People are chasing a high. So there's that. But also, I wanted to talk about the debates, right? So in the debates that happened, the first presidential debate, shouting match, really, I was just kind of watching it. And this is like a moment where I was just like, I just started laughing. It was like I treated it like a roast session, honestly, because they were just both going back and forth, and then the moderator, he clearly had no control of the room, and it was so clear because I mean this was it was so obviously biased against Trump. So I mean, like you can see these journalists and they're talking about Trump, but you can see that they don't. They're trying to. It's just a bias. But then they're going to have a Fox News debate, and you're going to see the bias, pro Trump, And it's interesting too now because I didn't even realize it. The vice presidential debate is happening tonight also, and Mike Pence straight up doesn't want to have a plexiglass thing, or it's just like there's no winning with these people. Like, did you not just hear your president got sick? No, I don't need a plexiglass. I'm a man. I don't need. I mean, since he's going to be debating a woman, is his wife going to have to like sit with him on the podium also? Like, how is this going to work? Who knows? So yeah. So we have a vice presidential debate tonight, and then we also have another presidential debate in the next week or so, on the 15th. It's going to be in Florida, Miami. So we'll see if Trump is still kicking by then, if something doesn't happen to him then, because like there were some really concerning signs when he was at Walter Reed. So, I mean, he's going to have like around the clock attention, but we'll have to see what happens there. So that's the presidential debates that occurred, and also Trump having COVID. White House is compromised. But again, with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Trump, of course, has selected his nominee. And his nominee is another woman, Amy Coney Barrett. And she has been appointed. She's an appeals court judge and a mother of 7. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure she's a nice lady. She has a pretty smile, but again, it's her policy positions and her ideological stance, which she's pro-gun, so that's good for me at least. Immigration and abortion, we'll have to see, but it's more so the battle that's going to occur and trying to confirm her. That's going to be a slog fest, and we have a month until the election. So they're really going to try to push it through. So reading from BBC, quote, Donald Trump, who as sitting president gets to select nominees, reportedly once said he was saving her for this moment, when elderly Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died and a vacancy on the 9-member court arose. It took the president just over a week to fast-track the 48-year-old conservative intellectual into the wings. This is his chance to tip the court makeup even further to the right ahead of the presidential election, when he could lose power. Barrett's record on gun rights and immigration cases imply she would be as reliable a vote on the right of the court as Ginsburg was on the left. According to Jonathan Turley, a professor of law at George Washington University, quote, Ginsburg maintained one of the most consistent liberal voting records in the history of the court. Barrett has the same consistency and commitment, he adds. She is not a work in progress like some nominees. She is the ultimate deliverable for conservative votes. And her vote, along a conservative majority, could make the difference for decades ahead, especially on divisive issues such as abortion rights and the Affordable Care Act, the Obama-era health insurance provider. Barrett's legal opinions and remarks on abortion and gay marriage have made her popular with the religious right, but earned vehement opposition from liberals. But as a devout Catholic, she has repeatedly insisted her faith does not compromise her work. So, yeah, that's Amy, or Judge Amy. So, she's a devout Catholic, conservative. So we'll have to see. So first we have to see the confirmation battle that's going to happen. We'll see about that. And then when she gets appointed, because I'm honestly anticipating that she'll get appointed. We'll see her record and what she does and what she votes on. I mean, I could see, Roe v. Wade being overturned. I could see it. And I get, like they said, the Affordable Health Care Act. Yeah. So we'll see, honestly, yeah. But that's, her. And I'm sure she's a nice lady. I'm not saying, a lot of people, like, they're attacking this. Like, they see an ideological difference and they try to make it personal. Like, the person is evil or something like that. Like, if this picture seems really nice. Like, so it's okay. So maybe I not agree with her on everything, but that's something else entirely. But that's the Supreme Court that's happening there. And, yeah. So we have that happening. And then we had another situation occur. So in Louisville, with the Breonna Taylor case that occurred, the officers involved, or one of the officers involved, was indicted, but for wanton endangerment. So nobody got any murder charges for the death of Breonna Taylor, and so that sparked unrest and protests around the country. And those protests are honestly still starting. They're still going on. They haven't stopped. But, initially when I heard about this Breonna Taylor story, like, I was kind of like on the same side, like, oh, this is terrible, and And now with some further research, starting to realize, okay, there's some other details that people conveniently ignored or didn't want to talk about. So, there was the aspect that Breonna Taylor did have involvement with drug trafficking. I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions, but like, they were casing her place, and her ex-boyfriend was involved with it, and she was involved with him in that stuff. Of course, now she's an EMT, or she was an EMT, so probably trying to better her life. So who knows if she was still involved in that stuff or not. But it was just an unfortunate case, really. And of course, in the situation, they had already apprehended her ex, so this warrant and this raid was kind of, because they weren't after her. Like, it was like, I guess it was a mix-up in that case. But it's interesting because in these situations, right, even if the police did act recklessly, you'll have to look at the laws. And if they acted within the confines of the rules, but still stuff went wrong, then they technically didn't break the law, right? So, I mean, the one cop, he was charged with unwanted endangerment because it was said that he was a bit on edge and he did fire into different apartments. So that's what they got him for. Of course, now there were witnesses saying, because people were saying that they didn't knock, they just slammed down the door. But then there's other witnesses that were saying that they did hear knocking and they did hear police. So there's that. And then people saying that Breonna Taylor died in her sleep, but she died in the hallway because her boyfriend opened fire when they broke through. And then the police returned fire and she was in the crossfire. So, I mean, all in all, it's an unfortunate situation in all aspects. And it's sad that it happened. And this has more to do with the militarization of the drug war, not necessarily racism. And that's, another thing that happens. Because just because a black person died, clearly there was racist cops and they're hunting down black people. What? Like, that's not what's happening here. Again, it's unfortunate because, her boyfriend I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but he opened fire because he saw people breaking in, and they probably did say police, but he didn't hear it. So all he's hearing is banging at the door, and then people break down with guns and such. Again, like I said, very unfortunate situation. But then you see the unrest and the protest that's breaking out, and this wasn't because they shut down Louisville before the announcement, so they knew it was going to be an announcement that people weren't going to agree with. And then people went out into the streets, and then the police just shut it down and just arrested everybody, right? They arrested some journalists, the Daily Caller, Jorge Ventura, which, Yeah, I'm liking him too. He's a pretty good guy, honestly. I see a lot of these like independent journalists out in the street, and I'm just like, damn, that's really what I got to be doing. But at the same time, I don't have the equipment, so to speak, to be out in the streets, and then people are gonna. I don't have any credentials. I'm just a guy recording, right? So, yeah, that's what's happening there. But the protests and the unrest weren't so violent. There wasn't as much looting and burning. I mean, there probably was, but not with the level of the George Floyd protest. Because with the George Floyd situation, that was like a firestorm. Like you could feel the anger, even if you weren't watching the videos and you weren't paying attention. You could feel the anger and the tension in the air, just going about your business, because everybody had the same thought in their mind that there's riots in the streets. So very different situation than what we have now. But again, I could be wrong, because what's revealed now, and this was happening today, Derek Chauvin has been released, and he had posted his bail, his $1 million bail. So get ready for protests, because there's going to be more demonstrations. People are going to be outraged by that. And then we got to wait till the verdict, which I think he's going to walk. I think he's going to walk, honestly, because now they're saying they're looking at his toxicology, George Floyd, the toxicology, what was in his system, all these other things, which, yeah, okay. Because the thing is that it has to be proven 100% that it was the knee on the neck that killed him, right? So when you have the toxins in his body, then that's okay. Well, maybe he was going into shock, or they'll try to twist it around, and they'll try to make it seem as though the stress from the arrest led him into a cardiac arrest or whatever. And so, I mean, that's what they were saying in the police autopsy report, and the independent autopsy report clearly stated it was the blood flow was cut off because of the knee to the neck. Which, I mean, look, if I hear somebody saying, "Oh, well, he had this in his system," I'm just gonna be like, "Okay, why don't you lie down and then let me sit on your neck for 9 minutes and see how you survive that." So there's that. But yeah, Derek Chauvin was released, and prepare for bad stuff to happen, honestly. And then we still have to wait on I think the trial is like already in effect, so who knows? But that verdict is going to come out probably in the next month or so. Oh boy. So anyway, yeah, that's him. That's that. So I wanted to talk about, at least in the domestic sphere, about the coronavirus situation that's occurring. Of course, we've reached the 200,000 threshold deaths. And maybe those numbers are over-exaggerated, under-exaggerated, who knows? But still, a lot of people are dying from this, so don't be sleeping on it. I know some personal people that are at risk. So, I mean, here's the thing, though, because, like, these are people who are close to me, but not close enough that I would cry. It's like, it's messed up, because I'm acknowledging that, like, it's messed up, because I do cry a lot. But it's just like, I have to learn to accept that there are going to be people in my life who are just going to die. They're just going to die. And then it's starting right now. So, I mean, I can't be in grief all the time. It's just, I have to keep pushing forward. And if you're somebody who learns how to process your emotions without, causing a tantrum or something, like, if you're somebody who can be stoic and just say, okay, well, I'm feeling this, so let me relax and be in the zone. They're like, what's wrong with him? Oh, somebody who can process his emotions? Oh, stay away. I don't know. Anyway, what I'm saying is, yeah, if something happens to certain people, of course, I would feel bad and I would feel sad. I can't, it's not that I don't allow myself to cry. It's just like, I can't be in a constant state of grief. Like, it's just, this is just what's going to happen. All right. We got to move forward. I mean, and that's another thing too, because it's not that, because death is not as scary to me as it is for other people, I should say. Of course, I want to avoid it as much as possible until I'm a ripe old age and pass away in my sleep. But, you know, it's just a part of life. There's just death. People die. You know, that's just what happens. And the sooner you learn to accept it, the sooner you learn to, because once you realize that this party comes to an end, then you really cherish everything that happens around you, and you really cherish the good and the bad, because at least you're feeling something. At least you're alive, right? So, you know, even when I am sad, I kind of think, I'm like, okay, well, at least I'm feeling this, and this is just a natural part of the cycle of life, and so on. So again, the second wave is starting to surge now. So the second wave is going to be worse. So I'm really going to have to try to isolate myself and be careful where I travel. Who knows? But, you know, particularly in places like New York, they're starting to shut down areas and zip codes again. They're not doing like a full shutdown, but it's coming. The shutdown is going to happen. The second shutdown is going to be worse. Businesses are going to go out, and, you know, and then we're going to have the election situation. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be bad, you know. Like, you know, I have, like I said, you know, family members that got infected in New York. And if any of them die, I'm not going to go to New York. I'm going to get a lot of flack for it. And a lot of people in my family are not going to be happy. But look, I can't bring my handgun there. They don't recognize Texas LTC. So I'm not going. And I don't want to be stuck in the city when the shit hits the fan. I don't want to be stuck in the city. No. But of course, people are like, oh, you're paranoid. And okay. All right. So that's happening there. Second wave, we'll see about the infections. But yeah, so that's the domestic area. Kind of short, you know, wanted to keep it concise. I wanted to at least talk about the natural world and just the nature of things right now. So last time I spoke, we had Tropical Storm Beta that came through the Texas coast, and it caused a bit of flooding in Houston and some rain out here. And that was a nice harbinger for fall. So temperatures did cool down a bit. So it's nice now. Now I can actually work deliveries throughout the whole day and not get heat stroke or something like that. So that's something that's good. Although I'm having my operation soon, so it's going to kind of inhibit my ability to work as much, at least for this month. Regardless, you know, we had that storm come through, some flooding there. I mean, a tropical storm, and then, like, you know, entire roadways got turned into rivers. That's Houston, right? So that happened. And then we also have currently Hurricane Delta that's in the Gulf Coast. And that has been rapidly intensifying. So, like, it kind of brew in the Caribbean first. And by the time it hit the Yucatan Peninsula, it had already been a Category 4. So right now, because it downgraded. So right now, actually, let me see real quick. Delta is a Category 2. So it just passed through Yucatan. So it's going to go north. It's going to continue north towards Louisiana. And who knows? They're projecting it to be at least a Category 3. I certainly see it hitting Category 4. So we'll have to see there. But it's going to hit Louisiana area. Basically the same path as Hurricane Laura. I mean, it's still quite a bit away from actually making landfall, but it's not too far away from the epicenter of Hurricane Laura. But it could go anywhere. Like, it could shift, and it can easily strike us here in Texas. So that's something that I have to get squared away, but it's going to hit in like the weekend or so. And I'm going to be down in Houston for that, which hopefully, I hope it doesn't hit Texas, because I don't want to be stuck in Houston recovering from an operation in the middle of a flood. Don't want that. But we'll have to see what happens there. So there's that. But speaking of floods, we had some massive floods that occurred in France. So there was a storm that hit there, and there was flooding, record floods that they've never seen before. And there's landslides and bridges destroyed. These villages have been isolated essentially. So, this is a pretty extensive damage that's occurred there. And these are areas that aren't used to this type of activity, weather events. So, yeah, they don't know how to deal with it, right? So, that's in Florida, and there's people missing, people have died. They're doing their recovery efforts there. So that's France, with flooding there. Also, we still have our fires in California, and a new wave of fires kind of started in Santa Rosa, Napa Valley area. It's interesting. Like, I imagine having those vineyards, like, it's not easy, because every year or so, the whole area burns to the ground, and you got to rebuild from the start. You see a lot of these Californians, and they're just like, yeah, I've never seen anything like this, and I lived there all my life. I don't know if I can leave. It's just like, dude, you gotta dip. This is no longer habitable. You can't live here. Why would you stay in an area that's gonna burn down? Then again, it's easier said than done, because they have a mortgage, and that's a heavy anchor. So, yeah, it's not as easy, to just leave. But then you have people like, especially the wealthier ones, they're leaving. Joe Rogan, and they're coming to Texas. Like, I've seen a lot of Californians come to Texas, and they fit right in. So, which is good. It's good because they still have some liberal stuff to them, liberal streaks, but then they like freedom. In Texas, to a certain extent, is about freedom, right? So there's that. So those Californian fires there. I also read somewhere that the first gigafire broke out. So that's like the first fire to reach over 1 million hectares or some ridiculous number. But essentially, it was just a bunch of smaller fires met into one super system. And the thing with these fires is that they create their own weather system also, and their own atmosphere. So it's a lot of science involved with it. It's pretty interesting, but it's also crazy. And you see the fire tornadoes and such, lightning bolts, yeah. So that's happening in California. In Russia, actually, there was an incident or ongoing incident where you have marine animals dying off. They're slowly getting, I don't know, they're starting to die. So I'm reading this from Moscow Times. It's this is an ecological disaster, really. Quote, nearly all seafloor dwelling life and pollution hit waters off Russia's Pacific coast in the Kamchatka region has been wiped out in an unexplained mass death of marine animals, scientists told the region's governor Tuesday. Images showing hundreds of dead octopuses, large fish, sea urchins, crabs washed up on the shore of, I can't read that, went viral over the weekend as environmentalists sounded the alarm over an ecological disaster. Kamchatka's governor, Vladimir Solodov, said that authorities were considering man-made pollution, natural phenomenon, or a volcano-related earthquake as possible causes of the mass death. As much as 95% of marine life along the seabed of Avacha Bay has been killed, scientists told Solodov Tuesday following an expedition to the area to collect water samples, search for dead wildlife, and carry out a survey dive. On the shore, we also did not find any large dead sea animals or birds, scientist Ivan Usatov said at the meeting. However, when diving, we find that there was a mass death of benthos, bottom-dwelling organisms, at depths from 10 to 15 meters. 95% are dead. Some large fish, shrimps, and crabs have survived, but in very small numbers. So, yeah, it's definitely with pollution. They don't really know, honestly. It's probably going to be covered up, really. But it's, I'd imagine seeing the images from that is a scene out of, what's Death Stranding, right? That's literally one of those images, right? But yeah, you just see all this death, and I imagine the smell. Oh God, it's terrible. But they're saying, probably petroleum leak of some kind or some type of pollution. But 95% of marine life dead just in this region. And this is a sign of things to come. That's all I have to say there. But yeah, this is kind of swept under the rug, really. Nobody really kind of talks about this, but yeah, there's that happening there. Also, speaking on environmental changes, we have the Amazon, and it's nearing its tipping point with these fires and the man-made activity with Bolsonaro. They're saying that it's reaching a tipping point into becoming a savanna. It's slowly going to turn into that. Although I read another theory that said it's just going to turn into a desert straight up because there's not enough biomass on the floor because it's all in the canopy. Because rainforest soil is it's not arable. Arable meaning fertile, that you can't really grow anything on it. But we could be very well wrong because they say a lot of the savanna in Africa was once lush rainforest at one point. But again, we'll have to see. But I can certainly see desertification happening because that's what happened with the Sahara at one point. It was a lush area, and then now it's a sand dunes everywhere. But that's happening in the Amazon. And when the scientists are saying it's reaching a tipping point, it's technically already passed. Like, all these projections now, they're like, wow, we weren't expecting these fires for another 30 years. Was it faster than expected? Everything is just accelerating now. That's what exponential, that's what it means. So, yeah, I mean, the Amazon is going to die out. And then Bolsonaro refused aid. I believe he refused aid from Biden, almost like $20 million. So it kind of shows like where his interests are because he has corporate interests that want to develop this area. The farmers and ranchers in that area, they want to develop it and, burn it down. And dude, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be an industrial wasteland, honestly. And then, of course, I talked about earlier, there were native tribes starting to, rebel, trying to, demonstrate and try to raise awareness. Like there was like a blockade on the major highway once by a tribe. So, they're going to try to protect their home because the Amazon is their home. And they understand that this is their lifeblood. Like if this goes, we all go, right? So these are true eco-warriors. But then, people are getting murdered, activists, tribal leaders, they're getting murdered, so that's happening there. But that's the Amazon, just another battle that's going on there. But that's really what I wanted to talk about with this natural segment, and that kind of like wraps up the segments that I wanted to talk about. I know this episode was a bit more quick. I have some stuff, like I said, like there's so much going on in my life right now that it's really uncertain. But this is like the one thing I like doing, so I'm just going to keep doing it. Right, so we have all this that's happening in the world. And yeah, you just got to keep your head up, right? And keep your head straight. And no, I'm certainly trying my best, but we're all struggling, right? But my point is really just stay aware, pay attention, what's going on, because you never know, anything could happen. Yeah. And lately, I've been listening to more, I'll talk more about music, really, just about what's happening, but I've been listening to more, like, heavy metal, like, doom metal music, because it's just fitting. Like, I'm already starting to build, like, a Boogaloo playlist. That's really what I'm doing right now. And I found some pretty good songs and pretty good bands. So I would recommend a couple. So I would say I would definitely check out Slift. So that's Slift. Another band I could recommend is All Them Witches. Oh, and another one, Acid Mammoth. So I'll recommend, those are the three that I could recommend if you're a metalhead. And I've realized that, like, the times where I start listening to metal and, like, hardcore music are usually, like, the times where I kind of get my act together a bit. So I'm going to try to stay with that. Yeah. So we'll see about that. So I don't have any closing remarks really, except for the music recommendations and just, just keeping you up to date with my personal life. It might be out of it maybe for next month. I don't know. But we have the election coming up. So I'm going to do my best to at least release an episode before the election. And I also did release my Kenshi playthrough that's on my YouTube. And I'll link the YouTube to my Reddit post, which I played Kenshi. And, again, personal life stuff, I haven't kept up with with a second playthrough. But, I finally figured out how to record and put it out on YouTube. My basic premise with the playthrough is that I have a settlement that I've been building up. So, I wanted to show you the potential that this game has, because there's a lot of potential, especially with mods. And so there's a settlement you can create, or there's base building you can create, or you can just be a roving band. You can do anything you want. But my whole goal is to try to, wouldn't not necessarily start a civilization, but to go to war with different factions and just, bring balance to the world, whatever. But I'm just trying to have a lot of fun with it. And with that playthrough, I had a group that I was attempting to create a second settlement or a fishing camp / fort. So that way I can start a campaign of aggression against the Holy Nation in Kenshi. But, not to, because this is something that I want to really play through and record and just show off, really. Because it's a fun game. I highly recommend it. It really is. But I like playing those games because it teaches you about logistics and organization and settlement management and such, feeding your troops and making sure they're well rested and such. It's very in depth. So I would recommend that to watch. Certainly something that I'm trying to record on and build on. Again, that's part of my extra content that I'm trying to release. But of course, if you will get my Patreon, you can get that earlier. So that way you won't have to deal with my ads, or, you can get first updates, right? So I got my Patreon, and for $1 a month, you can help me out. And as I said before, if I see people are donating, then that gives me further incentive to improve, and who knows? Of course, the incentive should be to produce the best content as possible, right? But again, I also need to do a better job of just communicating and because I'm a very private person, and of course online you deal with a lot of dirtbags, honestly. So, and trolls, and they can track you down, and all that internet drama, really. So that's why I kind of like staying private and not really engaging as much. But I do need to come out of my shell more and post stuff, and I would like feedback, and I would like somebody to at least reach out, because I'm getting positive reception. People are upvoting it, so I know people are listening and liking it, and I see the plays, and so I know people are listening, and I have good reviews so far. So again, so I know I'm getting somewhere. I know I'm tapping into something. It's just I gotta keep doing it. I gotta stay at it, because there's some moments where I'm just like, I don't feel like it, but I gotta keep doing it, because honestly, there might come a point where this is all I have, honestly, which it's not a bad thing. I like doing this. This is my thing, right? At least I have an outlet to talk, because a lot of people in my personal life, they don't want to hear this. I don't know if anybody in my personal life listens to this, because if they did, maybe they would have been like, hey, I didn't like what you said about this, and who knows. But again, if you have something to say to me, definitely reach out, on the Reddit post, or through my email, which is collapsetalkpod@outlook.com. That's also the same handle that I use for PayPal. So if you don't want to do a monthly donation, if you want to help out, you're more than welcome to do it. And then also the Patreon, Collapse Talk. I can't necessarily post that on Reddit posts. Mods don't like that. So you're going to have to find that. But there's that. I got my YouTube channel where I, post content. And then also my Twitter, which I retweet and do need to be more active there as well. But at the same time, it's more just, I have a lot of stuff on my plate. Trying to stay in college, which I honestly feel like I'm going to drop out. But at the same time, I just don't give a shit anymore. Like, it makes you want society to collapse when you see all the bullshit that you have to do, and it's just like, just fuck it, So we'll have to see. I'm just at my wit's end, really. Anyway, so that's what I have to say. I'm going to be recuperating, so I'll be fine. But it's going to be the next couple of weeks are going to be a bit different. And then who knows what else could happen. I mean, anything could happen. Tomorrow something could happen and everything goes to shit, really. So we just got to wait and see. So that is me. Thank you for listening. This quick little episode, but thank you for tuning in and bearing with me. So hope you're staying happy and healthy. Certainly hope that things are going well for y'all. Love you all for staying around. We'll get through it. Thank you.